Okay, welcome to Chapter 5, Sophisticated Cyber Criminal Organizations. So basically what we're going to be talking about is organized crime, how organized crime has moved out onto the web. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about the history, and we're going to go through some of the different types. All right, so at the end of this, you should be able to describe the evolution of digital crime, rogue individuals to sophisticated corporate organizations, define and describe various types of espionage, define and describe the various types of insider fraud, identify and discuss various types of sophisticated criminal organizations, discuss the underground marketplace referred to as the deep web or Tor network. And what we are looking at basically is just how cybercrime evolved from traditional crime. And we talked about this in week one, and we talked about it again in week two. But this will be a recurring theme as you go through. We don't have um, we don't have really new crimes. We just have crimes that have morphed. All right, you see the first one here. His first cyber-related attack was done in 1870, and that was a phone system. Basically, the people rejacked the system, so it called different places. They consider that to be the first time that an electronic or a digital communication means was tampered with. So I mean, this is nothing new. What is new is how people are doing the crime. The same thought is there, the same potential is there. What is dropped? Well, the risk is dropped because people don't see cybercrime as being as dangerous or as bad as committing crime, in the real world. So the risk goes down. They rationalize it. I'm not really hurting anybody. Who cares if someone loses a few dollars here and there, and all those things that we've already talked about, to this point. Um, Credit card theft, fraud, electronic theft of money, things like that. That's your number one crime. I mean, fraud and transactional theft. Those are the largest crimes on the internet today. They're not sexy. They're not really cool. They're just the plain old fraud stuff. The child pornography and cyber espionage and things like that all take the headlines. You don't have many exciting cyber fraud stories in the web or on the newspapers today because it just is what it is. But it's also a huge percentage of the digital crime in our country today. Um, as we move everything to the web, you're going to expose your data. I tell people all the time. They say, hey Steve, what's the easiest way to protect myself with my phone? I said, get rid of the phone you have and go buy a basic phone that makes phone calls. Because the more things you have on it, the greater the threats to your security. The dumber your phone, the more secure you are. Same thing with our computers. The more we put everything online, the more you put everything out there, and the more you connect to the web, the more potential you have to be ripped off. Um, we're going to see a growth here, especially in the new or near future with virtual reality and things such as that. You're going to see new crimes that are going to generate or spawn from that. You're going to see a new type of criminal that comes out, a much more educated criminal as we get into virtual reality. We move into larger data stores. We start moving everything off onto data storage. We start trying to store our memories, things such as that. You're going to see a increase in the differences and the types of computer crimes that will come with it. And you're also going to see people taking greater risks. Um, as the understanding that there's not enough cops out there to really police the world, there's going to be more and more people are going to see the digital realm as being the place to do their crime. We already have terrorists on the internet that are recruiting openly, actively recruiting for their organizations. We have groups like Anonymous and other large gang organizations that are out on the web. The Crips, Bloods, all your traditional gangs all have web presences and do collaborative crime on the internet. So the internet is just increasing our capability for criminal organizations to exist. So the elements of crime are inherent and practically identical to the activities of cyber terrorism and state-sponsored information warfare and espionage. The distinction between these activities is most often defined by the perspective of the victim. So I wanted to read that out to you because it really is true. So what a lot of people see is a terrorist act. Many police look at it and say that was a criminal act. A guy who takes a bomb and he goes into a nightclub, I look at it as that's a crime. That's a guy that's going in to commit, homicide or whatever. And a lot of people say, no, no, no. He might have been a certain religious order, so therefore it must be some type of terrorism. And terrorism is becoming a way of getting information that you couldn't get under the law. So law enforcement sometimes uses terrorism to allow them to get to evidence that they would not be able to get to in a traditional crime, because terrorism right now is the buzzword and cyber terrorism is a buzzword and cybercrime is a buzzword. And whenever you have buzzwords, typically you're able to get different types of evidence that you might not get under the traditional law and traditional crime. Espionage and intellectual property theft. Now, we've talked about this in the first couple of weeks. They say espionage was reported back in the 1700s. I mean, it goes back, I would say it even goes back before that. I mean, this might be the first time it's reported, but, espionage goes back to the first time, somebody loosened a bolt on a wagon wheel, or somebody, took a rock out of a formation and the rocks all fell down on the caveman. So espionage and kind of the back end dirty trick stuff, spy versus spy kind of stuff. It's been around for a very, very long time. The internet absolutely lets us do a greater job of collecting. Allows us to do a better job of going out and doing active spying, things like that, and doing active espionage. If I can if I can put all the chlorine into your dam because I can fake the controller board to think that it hasn't put enough chlorine into the water, if I can dump the entire chlorine into your, I can poison your water system. I can, if I can get into the controllers of your dams, or if I can get into the controllers of your pipelines and things such as that, and I can reverse feeds on pipeline controllers. I can cause pressure in pipes to blow pipes. I can, there's a lot of things that I can do, cause reactors and energy stations to go into hyperactive or turn off, or other, kind of crazy stuff. And those are all very possible things that are out there that can be done to another country. Intellectual property, or IP, and you'll hear that a lot. People say, "Hey, that was an IP theft." So then it's not internet protocol. It's intellectual property theft. It's basically somebody's attempt to steal your patents, your ideas, things like that. And that's big. That's big business, especially between businesses. Xerox was fined in 1997. They were fined, I think it was $60 million for stealing intellectual property from Hewlett Packard. And Xerox pled guilty and took the beating. But basically what they were doing was sending people to be employed at Hewlett Packard, and those employees were actually employed at Xerox, and basically they fed back to Xerox all the information from R&D, things that they could find out from Hewlett Packard. Literally artistic works, designs. Again, look at China. China, for the longest time, stole every copy of Windows. They said that 1% of all Windows operating systems in China were actually licensed and registered. Of the government computers, they said less than 0.05% of all government computers had licensed software. It was all copyrighted, stolen intellectual property. Other countries do that to us all the time. We come up with good programs and things like that, and they'll steal your intellectual property, and there's not a lot you can do. Remember our copyright, our USC, our United States Code, that goes out about 12 miles off the borders. And once it goes past that, then you're hoping the international community then protects you. But if the country that's stealing the information or country that's doing the bad stuff doesn't care, well, then you have an issue exercising any type of attribution. The Office of National Counterintelligence Executive defines various types of espionage. You have three basic types: industrial, economic, and corporate. Industrial, as you can imagine, is anything to do with our major industries, gas, coal, energy, water, large industrial complexes. Our economic, anything that has anything to do with our economic growth, banking, stock markets, things such as that. And then corporate, just our basic corporates. I can take your websites down like Yahoo. I can do a denial of service attack on those, things such as that. Those can all be seen as, espionage or some type of cyber attack. So as you can see from the graph here, customer-related information under intellectual property theft, 26% goes to customer-related information. That's gonna be your personal information. Social security numbers, date of birth, names, etc. Basic research, R&D. Strategic business planning, and then manufacturing a product. The reason you don't steal manufacturing a product is it's already there. So if I'm going to steal something, I don't want to steal something that's already on a life cycle that's going to die out by the time I reproduce it and I start selling it. It's already going to be could be mid or end of life cycle for that product. So I want the next product. I want the next widget that you're to come out with, and that's why I'm going after your R&D. And as you can see, 20% is R&D and 5% is manufacturing of the product itself. That's just basic business. I don't want to steal what you're already selling. I can go to the store and buy that and then reverse engineer it. But again, reverse engineering a product that's already out doesn't do me a whole lot of good. Espionage is a service. Basically, we're hiring out to criminal organizations. And we say, hey, we'll pay you X to get into this system. Hire coders for cause. You may be able to elicit someone to do something politically for some other ideological reason, maybe by political or religious, or they just don't like the other people. Typically, when you're doing buy for hire, like they say right here, they're not as well trained or financed as state actors because they're foreign. They are a criminal organization. They are another entity. When you're dealing with state-sponsored actors, you're dealing with people that are very well funded, probably very well trained, and receive continuing or upgraded training. Plus, they receive a certain immunity from the law because they're not going to be prosecuted within their own borders, where these cartels or other organizations that are out there for hire, they may be given up as kind of the sacrificial lamb when things go badly for that state. We talked about insider fraud quite a bit the other day, and we talked about the amount of damage that can be done by an insider. Remember, it's kind of like a Trojan, like the old Trojan horse. The soldiers are on side, they wheel the Trojan horse in, they hop out, and they kill everybody in the village. Well, the same thing happens. You hire the cyber criminals counterpart or drone or friend or whatever. They go into the organization and they cause the damage from inside. Or they steal the information from inside, or they do other things from inside, monitor the R&D, things such as that. I told you, we prosecuted a guy that was using his BlackBerry to take pictures of the slides in an R&D meeting. He was moving to another company, and then he was forwarding those pictures over to that other company. So people they get ingenious on how to use their technology tools in this realm. Losses are primarily due to the misappropriation of cash, non-cash assets by employees. Again, it comes back to fraud. So if I can steal something from you, um, and it's a financial instrument of some type, or I can deny service which causes you financial pain, or if I can get financial gain off your financial loss, that's really what this whole fraud thing's about. And again, fraud is the big the big actor on the street when it comes to computer crimes. Um, when you're talking about employees committing fraud, typically they have some motive or reason. Uh, they aren't just there and they say, "Oh, I'm here to commit crime," or "Oh, I woke up one morning, I think I can steal money." Normally, employees have some reason, purpose, something happens. They may have a bad supervisor, they feel threatened by the company, they feel justice hasn't been served, they work for another company, they've been given some. So there's usually some other reason that goes along with them committing the fraud. Most employees just don't wake up one morning and say, "Hey, I'm just going to fraud the company." Um, and anytime you have a decentralized system or decentralized um, corporate environment where you have less control and lots of individual control at the client workstations, for example, you're going to have more fraud. Um, or when you don't have a good vetting system in place where the employee comes in and you check the employee's background and you go through a process to make sure that they actually are who they say they are. And then average losses are higher when you're dealing with the management level. Well, the reason is because they have access to bigger things. An employee that's hired may not have access to very much, where a manager has access to a lot greater structures within the organization and may be able to get into other or parts of the organization that that employee may would not be able to get into. And then fraud-related crimes over the past several years involved systems, databases, um, and I think everyone here has probably seen or witnessed a news article that says the Department of Defense was hacked and their database, their medical, Medicare or health database was stolen, and thousands of veterans are now identity theft victims, or some local bank lost the records, their mortgages were stolen through some process online. Things like that are pretty much a daily occurrence. And again, as long as you put stuff out on the web, every time you put something on the web and it's unprotected or it doesn't have the protection it needs, you risk the likelihood that someone's going to try and steal it or use it for something they're not supposed to. Um, and then insider threats, we talked about getting hired at a target company. That's a classic one. And then once you're in that target company, you start doing your criminal activity. There was for a very long time, people used to lease the equipment that one company would turn in. So you would turn your copier in, and another company would come in and rent that exact copier, and then do digital forensics off the hard drive in a copier, because all the copiers have hard drives in them, and most copiers store images, and companies very rarely format the hard drives or have the hard drives reset to a wiped state when they're picked up. A lot of companies just release the hard or the copier, it goes off to the store, and basically then it's done. So looking at espionage, and especially corporate espionage and insider threat and things like that, you're looking at crimes of availability, accessibility, where the company has not put in the protections it needs to, and then they don't watch, and by the time that they know something has happened, it's late. Um, once the criminal activity has happened, then you got your detection of the fraud. The company says, "Oh, something's gone on," and then the company reports the fraud to law enforcement, and that is not always true. The company may or may not report the fraud to law enforcement because they don't want the news out there. Security company X doesn't want to tell everybody that they were hacked and they lost, thousands of records. The bank doesn't want to tell everybody that yes, their accounts were all, compromised. People fear the cyber world and the cyber threat and all that. And if your bank has been threatened, or if your bank has been compromised, you're not going to be running down there to put more money in that bank. So a lot of times, fraud will be covered up. It will be dismissed. It will just be a cost of doing business, just like shrinkage or anything else, where a business loses money on products and services. So again, just because it says the certs and everybody say, yeah, you're gonna have this thing reported, it does not mean you're gonna have things reported to law enforcement. Many times it goes under the rug. All right. Then we start talking about sabotage. Sabotage is different than espionage because you have a different intent. So here we have maybe someone that's taking revenge against the organization. So like, for example, the oil pipeline that's up in South Dakota, a lot of sabotage happened on that pipeline. People try to destroy the pipeline to prevent it from going through. Again, they weren't doing espionage. They weren't, trying to cause political or state-sponsored kind of things. What they were doing is they were taking out their frustrations. They were taking out their grievances on this organization. So, or against these organizations. So, sabotage, again, it has a different type of threat, a different type of intent. Insider sabotage, that could be a compromised employee. So somebody that comes in and they work for a while, and then someone gets a hold of them and says, hey, we need to radicalize you or get you ideological about saving the woodland animal that your company is killing. Next thing you know, you may have sabotage happening inside the network. Or inside the corporation, slowing the business process down, things such as that. So sabotage is, again, nothing new. It's just another access point or another way of attacking a company. So if I want to get back at the company, I'm going to use the tools that I know how to use. If I am a great bomb builder, I'll build a bomb. If I'm a great fire starter, I'll start a fire. If I'm a great IT technician, I'm going to do something that's going to hurt, the organization or stop the organization from getting what they want. And like the slide says, there's a lot of times where it gets out of control. Look at the I Love You virus. The I Love You virus was never intended to take down the network. It was intended as an experiment by the MIT guys. They just wrote it wrong. And when it broke out into the web, it did things that it wasn't supposed to do. Again, the intent was not to destroy the web. The intent was to gather information from the web, but it ended up, destroying the web. So a lot of times when people do sabotage and things such as that, they cause a destruction, or they cause destruction that is not something that they intended. Organized. So now we're going to talk a little bit about organized crime. Organized criminal organizations, you have seen them online, you have seen them in the news, the cartels, ISIS, Anonymous, all of these organizations are a part of what they call the criminal organized structure. And an organized structure is basically you have an organizational or hierarchy that runs the criminal entity. You have a boss, and you have subordinate leaders, and you have followers that do what you're supposed to do. So, when you're talking about a criminal organization, you're talking about a much more refined thing that has a purpose. Organizations do a certain thing. They make profit. Many of these criminal organizations run just like a business. They have profit and loss and balance sheets, and they have business meetings to talk about what they're doing better. There's SWOT analysis. There's the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. They do all the things that a normal business does, but that's how they run their organization. and they run a profitable, but they're selling illegal activity, and that's the difference between a non-criminal organization and a criminal organization. Is one's doing criminal and the other one's not. 80% of all cybercrime worldwide is perpetrated by the organized crime associations, and you'll find a lot of that comes from our friends in Russia and China, and through the Croatias, places like that. You have a very sophisticated set of criminal organizations that use the internet to attack and then promote their agenda. So we're going to kind of run across a couple of different types here. The use of social media. Social media is, especially look at take one example. Look at ISIS. ISIS, their whole structure of radicalization comes down to their social media. They do a great job of getting out there and letting people see what a good organization they are, and they radicalize and they encourage people to come to them. And that criminal organization or terrorist organization is kind of the same thing. They're very good at using the social media. Social media also is a great way to communicate, because I'm out there with the billions of other messages going across the line. It's very hard for law enforcement to be able to pick out a single thread within a social media network and say, oh, there goes a message from so-and-so to so-and-so. It's very, very difficult. And I will tell you, there are platforms out there that do, basically scour all the traffic going on. But again, it's very difficult to pull out information. And then if I use code words, I mean, now you're throwing another level of kind of toughness on top of me trying to figure this stuff out. So I tell you that there's beautiful red flowers, and that means that we need to blow up some building. Well, good luck putting that together unless you know exactly what it is that I'm saying or doing on the web. You have different ways of transferring different information. This is where steganography comes in, things like that. So using Microsoft's collaborative environment, Office, using Google and their free online collaborative tools. So I create a Google organization. We can share Word doc or Google Docs and Sheets, and do all of our coordination, travel planning, all that kind of stuff, all online. So the web gives me a great collaborative environment. And because I'm just one of a million other collaborative environments out there, it becomes very difficult for you to find me or identify me from the white noise of the network. And that's kind of what they refer to it as when you're talking about these organizations. All right, so we're just going to run really quickly. We're going to run across the types. I want you to read in your books and go over each one of these organizations. Do a little research. Get on the web. Look up each one of these, and you'll be surprised at some of the content. Look at some of the Interpol stuff on these organizations. African criminal organizations. The Nigerian fraud, for example. The Nigerian fraud, as of last year, was the third largest industry in Nigeria. It rakes in, as it says right there, up to $2 billion each year, and that's Dr. So-and-so has got $100 million, or the prince of such and such needs to get out of jail, and will pay you $100 million if you cash this check, but you've got to send them $2,000 for the tariff to get the check into the country. So for $2,000, you'll get $100 million. It's a great deal. And people do it all day long. The problem is the people that do it are not people that can afford to do it. A lot of times people that do these types of crimes are on their last dime. They're searching for something to save them, and this is their Hail Mary. And there's $2 billion worth of Hail Marys that go out a year. So again, African criminal enterprises, you'll find small countries that need money tend to look the other way with criminal investigate or these criminal organizations. If you've got a very small country, Take the country of Togo, for example. They were housing server farms, just full of all kinds of junk, and it was the place to store your criminal tools, your hacking tools, things like that, because they're just, Togo did a great job of having protected servers. Um, and unfortunately, you know, that country had a very small population, and that was their main stream of revenue. So when you went knocking on Togo's door to say, "Hey, we need to do a search warrant," they were not friendly and they were not helpful, and they weren't going to provide you much assistance. Uh, so setting your organization up in the world to take advantages of these types of areas has become one of those things that you find very common in the uh, computer criminal world. The Asian criminal enterprises, they've been around a long time. The most known ones, Yakuza. I'm sure you've heard that term on the TV. They have globally expanded. They are a huge organization involved in every type of crime, uh, moving people, child pornography, fraud, uh, crimes, electronic crimes, assassinations. They're involved in just about everything, and they use the computers very diligently as a part of their collaborative event. They have email servers. They have the ability to communicate between each subgroups, things such as that. So Asian criminal enterprises, again, been around for a long time, very, very entrenched in the internet, and they're very careful. This is not a low-hanging fruit group. Catching someone doing something stupid is very rare, and makes it very tough for investigators or the feds. These guys are kind of new. The Balkan criminal guys, Albania, the Croatians, Kosovo. A lot of this came out of the war. Um, these guys banded up. When the Soviet Union split up, lots of little organizations broke up. Uh, they are not as well structured as uh, some of the other organizations around the world, um, but they're very closely related to their own family. So this is almost a mafia style organization. It's very European um, kind of organization, um, not trusting of the outsider, and things such as that. But again, they're recently new. We're still defining and determining who they are. And again, most of them came out of the breakup of the Soviet Union. And the funny thing is, these guys, most of these people that learned all this stuff were all trained by the Soviet Union back in the day, because they were writing viruses and they were writing other things they were releasing against the West. Well, when the Soviet Union broke up, a lot of these guys had nothing to do and nowhere to go. A lot of them were PhD scientists in significant technologies, and they found working in the cartels and working for criminal organizations was a lot more profitable than going back to deeper into Russia or somewhere else and taking a lower end job. The Eurasian criminal enterprises. Um, these are basically your Soviet Union, Central Europe. They've been around for a long time. Um, you know, we've tracked most of them from the 70s, but you're looking at your Russian organized crime as being one of your predominant ones. Very well or very well financed. Um, they are uh, not afraid of American law enforcement at all. They're not afraid of Interpol at all. Um, they are very bold in what they do. They are state sponsored for the most part. They have a lot of money, a lot of technology, and they have unlimited bandwidth in most instances. So you're seeing an increase in this realm, especially now with the Ukraine fight going on, the Crimea when they went through there. Um, there's lots of books that are being written right now on the use of uh, hackers by the Russian government. I just got done reading a set of papers from the Estonian Center for Defensive Operations, cyber operations, and they were very, very clear in their book. There's about 26 papers in there from different scientists inside of that organization, and they all point the finger and say, this is where they're coming from. This is the next threat to the world, is this increase in Russian state-sponsored crime. The Italian organized crime, the mafia, the La Cosa Nostra, they've been around forever. You've heard of them. You've seen movies. And all they did is they moved their stuff onto the web. They're doing the exact same thing they did in the world. Their thefts, their robberies, fraud, child pornography, moving human people or human trafficking, all that stuff. Much like the Yakuza, but it's done by the Italian organizations, and they're all on the web. Your Middle Eastern criminal organizations. This includes your ISIS's and your other organizations. They are big into fraud because fraud pays for their terrorist organizations. They need money. So you've seen a great increase in the number of fraudulent exercises and fraudulent platforms being built by these Middle Eastern organizations. And you'll also find that many of these Middle Eastern organizations, the people were trained here in the United States. They're classically trained in the United States for different types of computer programming. Many then returned back to the Middle East and went. The rest of them, you'll find they train in India, which is a very low cost place to go get your education, but you get a very good education. I have some friends that just attended a forensic course in Mumbai, and they said it was a great course, very well taught, well-known company, but the pricing for it was very inexpensive. So it's definitely somewhere that people like to go get trained, in these other countries. The Mexican and the South American drug cartels. These guys use the computers basically to manage their drug activities. They have the marketplaces, things like that where they sell. But predominantly, that's what they use the computers for. Not as sophisticated as other criminal entities are with the internet. Uh, Basically, they use it just for command and control, a lot of financing and things such as that. Not big websites, not big web presences, things that you might find with other organizations, especially your Croatian and smaller groups that are trying to get a name for themselves. They have websites that you can go to and read about what they're going to do and all that kind of stuff. Like the Bloods and the Crips and the other American-based gangs all have recruiting websites. Come be a Blood, come be a Crip, and there are a couple of organizations in the South American, Mexican area that do encourage through the web or try to recruit through the web, but not many. All right. So now we go to the deep web, the scary deep web. The deep web is nothing but the web, just it's not captured on DNS and Google. You're not going to find www.silkroad.com by going to Google because it's not cached and cataloged. And if it's not on Google for 90% of users of the computers, then it doesn't exist. The Tor environment, so you have your Onion, basically what's called an Onion network, and you have something called a Tor browser, which allows you to browse this network or browse across this internet that's basically DNS-less, isn't cataloged on the Google and things such as that. So you have a different way of searching. A lot of it is, here's this website, here's the name, here's the IP address, go to this website, and you'll find what you're looking for. A lot of stuff is passed from person to person. A lot of it is very closely held. A lot of times you're not going to find kind of the low-hanging fruit people here. This is definitely the more sophisticated user. A lot of kind of script kiddies and stuff like that get out here on the dark web, and a lot of people get out here and kind of play. But your true criminal can be found in this environment, and running into one of those people out in this environment using your Tor browser, Tor network, definitely is something that is possible. And you're doing your paper on the Tor network, so you're definitely going to be digging into the research papers and identifying a lot more about the Tor network as you dig in. And then criminal and illegal activities flourish in the deep web. Again, it's unregulated. It's not monitored. We don't do a good job of monitoring. Law enforcement does not monitor the deep web. I just did an article with the Daily Beast yesterday talking about the deep web and how they're selling these Marine Corps nude photos on the internet, and they wanted some information about the deep web. It's not widely known. People don't understand the Tor network and the deep web very well, so it's kind of a mysterious place still. And it's still one of those places where people, you talk about it and it's like, hey, I'm on the dark web, the deep web, and it's more scary than it is anything else, other than technology wise it's just an IP address that's masked by an inability to get to it unless you have a specific type of browser that allows you to get to that website through a specific protocol. So it's not it really is it's more challenging, I guess is better to say. The average user is not going to pick up a Tor or download the Tor browser, run the Firefox with Tor, and head out onto the web. It's just not going to happen. So you have to have a little bit of knowledge about the computers, and you have to have a little bit of understanding about what it is you're looking for. So that concludes chapter 5. And with that, I send you off with your Tor exercise and wish you good luck, and I will see you in the next chapter.